Well, we're streaming. Hello, everyone. So, in the event that this is cutting off the first 30 seconds, we're just going to start with a check-in. So, I'm doing great today. How are you, David?
Well, so this is change of seasons. We're just now finishing up, finding out the results of all of our plans for the 2020 gardening season.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not having a whole lot of motivation right now because the next step is start planning for 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not quite ready for that yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out if I'm going to be getting plastic for the hoop house to keep going through the winter. Got a few other people who have offered to pitch in on it for the earth garden. I'm sure I could find some other people. But yeah, I still need to look that up. It's just a lot to do.
So one of the things I could have worked on today is adding more material into our greenhouse,
Mm-hmm.
because it has been diminished over the season. But
Mm-hmm. Cool. So yeah, I've been just watching on the various platforms. It looks like we're definitely working on Twitch, but I am not seeing it popping up yet on YouTube or Facebook. But hopefully it will soon. I think those are just a little bit slower to connect. So let's just get started. Start with the intro. Hi, welcome to the Regenerative Revolution. So this is where we come together to solve big problems like global warming and food shortages and lack of good nutritious food for people. And there's all sorts of ways to do that. And so we're working on various projects, and I'm a regenerative enterprise business consultant. So I am helping people come up with business models, should they be for a for-profit or a nonprofit. Both need some sort of a model to work from of what it is they're trying to achieve. And so I'm helping people define that clearly so that they can get incorporated, bring in more people, get clear about what they're doing, strategize, all that sort of thing. So I've been working with David for a couple months now. And he has an organization, the Living Systems Institute. You can find a description of that underneath him in the bio and his project description. And so he's using this nonprofit that he has to start some sort of a new cooperative that will empower people to do regenerative gardening in their own lawns, and that would include training people and supporting people to go out and help people in their lawns. So there's a program where people would sign up for 1 hour a week to have someone come and help with their garden and show them regenerative practices and help them set up things like compost piles. And so David would be, training and supporting those people, and then they would kind of be on their own to go find clients to work in their gardens. They would have some support like marketing help and a organization. This cooperative is the structure that we're looking at using. So we're trying to figure out how to set that up. And David hasn't incorporated the cooperative yet. He just has the nonprofit. So that's what we've been talking about so far. And I've been going through this regenerative enterprise design workbook with him where I ask him a bunch of questions. And then I take those answers and I copy them into the regenerative enterprise design canvas, which is this little summary of the business plan, basically. And I've been filling that in for him. It's just a draft that he can edit as he goes. But we're at this point where we talked about financials last time, and now we're talking about structures. We're getting into the organizational structure of this cooperative, which will hopefully help him when he goes to work with a lawyer or another business consultant. He'll already have information about what it is that he wants it to look like. So we're trying to get that basic structure down, and then he'll need to work with a lawyer to figure out exactly how to do that legally. But I'm going to try to help come up with as much idea of what that would look like and ideas for infrastructure. And I have looked into incorporation laws in Colorado, where he is, because I used to live in Colorado. So I have read like the cooperative incorporation laws for Colorado. Like I actually do know what's in there to some extent, but I'm not a lawyer. But I can help at least craft a proposal. So that's where we're at. And we're also, since we're live here, we're open to the audience participating. We haven't had much of an audience participation yet. So if you're out there and you want to talk with us, please just start talking. Like just use the comments down below or use the chat room, whichever platform you're on. We're on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook right now. So you can use any of those to talk to us, and we'll answer your questions or talk about your ideas. So okay, so I'm going to start here with David. The first question that I have is, what are the categories of people who will be involved financially and in decision making? And I have this diagram, and this diagram I adapted from this model called Circles of Engagement in an Open Community that I got from Arthur Brock, who's one of the founders of Holochain. And he's done a lot of organizing in open organizations, open source kind of stuff. And so he had this diagram. It's basically just a bullseye. And it's like from the outside, like newcomers, people who are just kind of passing by, engaging with your organization, in towards the middle of, you'd have your like owners, board members, whoever has the most decision making or ownership or power in the organization would be in the middle. And the idea is, in any open community, even though you're open to new people coming in, there are thresholds. You have to actually sign up for something or agree to something in order to come into the next level. And so we want to get clear on that. And that's kind of the basis then for our organizational structure. When we look at the legal structures, which of those lines means ownership? Which of those lines means, profit sharing or anything like that? So let's start with like the outside. So how does somebody first come into the organization? What would you say is kind of the first level of engagement?
Well, so the first level of engagement is to want to become a gardener, I would say, or a homeowner needing the help of a gardener. So the driving force is that $100 a month and the commitment to pay for 4 hours a month of work. And then, but the relationship there is the homeowner is in control of what the gardener is going to be doing within the parameters of the type of things that we do, which is processing carbon on site, the materials that are generated on site processed into new gardens. And so that's what we're working with right now, is how do we find more gardeners and how do we find more homeowners, because that's going to be the basis for the organization as a whole. Right.
Well, I'm wondering if these are different levels, though, the homeowner and the gardener. So if this is a cooperative, who's, it might be better if we start with the middle, like who's the owners of the cooperative?
Well, it would be the people doing the work. And so we call it the cook and the gardener, but we're not to the point of planning how the cooks are going to actually work yet, because we don't have the resources for them to do anything.
Right.
So let's just say the people doing the work, which is the cooks and the gardeners.
Yeah, I'm going to put gardeners and then I'll put in parentheses workers. So yeah, I mean, I would say they're maybe not the very center level, but maybe the next to the center, because they're owners. I might say board members, because cooperatives do have directors, board directors, and they would have more decision-making power and more responsibility within the organization.
And I think we might technically have to have a central organization to begin with, but ultimately who is going to fill those positions would be up to the gardeners. so if we thought of it in terms of this group of gardeners is making their own decisions on how they're going to deal with this set of homeowners, maybe divide the city up into different regions, areas.
Mm-hmm.
And then we want to then pool, um, share the cost of certain support services for those gardeners, such as bookkeeping and accounting and um, uh, liability insurance and health insurance, or whatever we can get to.
Mm-hmm.
And then who the people that are going to be doing that support work would be another set of workers, and who's going to make the decisions about making sure that the work gets done, who is going to be in charge. Those people should be elected by the workers. So each pod may be sending a representative to a central council that would then talk about, okay, all of the pods have these joint resources, and how are we going to spend them?
Okay. So here, hold on. Let me just. I keep accidentally.
I wish it was more articulate. But...
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna help you get there. Okay. So, sorry, I'm having to move things around to get the words in there right. Okay. I need to stop doing that. Okay. So, yeah, I don't know how knowledgeable you are about cooperatives at this point. So, I'm going to talk more to the audience because I assume that there are people in the audience who don't know much about cooperatives. So I'll just kind of lay out some basics of it just to make sure we're on the same page. Yeah, so in a cooperative, it's different than a normal corporation because instead of one share, one vote, it's one person, one vote. So it's more democratic because it doesn't matter how many shares you own. It's one person, one vote. So nobody has more power than anybody else unless they're been elected to a position. So the way that works is that there's two classes of shares. There's membership shares, and then there's investment shares, or preferred shares is what they're called. Sorry. So membership shares, you would just the people who belong to a class, like workers. It could either be workers, customers, or producers. Those are the three classes that could be members of a cooperative. Now, you can do multiple of those. You could combine a worker and a consumer cooperative. So you could hypothetically have homeowners and cooks and gardeners all be members. That would be a multi-stakeholder cooperative. Now, you could do all three. Then it gets a little complicated, and there's always this question of, is there a conflict of interest? So workers and customers might have some conflict of interest where they want different things. So you have to kind of think about that, and also think about numbers wise. I was on the board of directors of the Oklahoma Food Cooperative, and I at least felt like it was a problem that we elected most of the board members just by the whole membership, and yet it was a consumer and producer cooperative. There were way more consumers than producers, so the consumers had a lot more power in voting for the board than the producers did, even though the producers were actually more reliant on the cooperative for their living. They actually had more stake in it in a lot of ways. They had less power. So I feel like that created this kind of negative dynamic within the organization where the people on the board weren't really business savvy and that sort of thing. So you got to be careful about that sort of thing. And then so it's one member, one person, one vote, and then people can also buy these preferred shares that would give them extra profits, but not any extra decision making power. No extra votes, but you do get extra profits if you own more shares. But let me break that down for you. So the profits are split between these two, the preferred shares and the membership shares, and the way that works is that up to an 8% gain on the investments of the preferred shares. So let's say you had $1 million worth of preferred shares that are owned by people. You can only pay out up to 8% of $1 million to those people. Does that make sense?
In a year, do you mean?
In a year. Yeah. Yeah, and that's for tax purposes. Hypothetically, you could, but then you would lose the tax benefits of being a cooperative, which is like you can do pass through. You aren't double taxed as a cooperative. So there's a tax benefit there, but you don't get it if you pay out more profits than that 8%. So any additional profits over that 8% would be paid, or whatever the board decides. The board could decide to only pay out 5%. Whatever the board decides for that year, any additional profits would go to the members based on their patronage. So it's not how many shares they have, it's how much business they did with the cooperative in that year. So if you have worker cooperative, then like with this cooks and gardeners, however many members and however much work that those gardeners did, however much money they brought in for the cooperative or through the cooperative, that would determine what portion of that profit they get. So the workers that worked more that year would get more profit. Okay, if it was a consumer cooperative, it would be how much you bought in that year. So you'd have an account, you'd have to account for that. So this is one of the negative things about being a cooperative. You have to account for like each individual member's like purchases, you're counting for people's income anyway. You have to do that. But in a normal business, you don't have to account for each individual person's purchases. With a consumer cooperative, you do. So that you can pay out those profits, like REI. REI does that. So that's how the profit works. Now, decision making. So you've got this one person, one vote thing going on, but that's only for ownership decisions. It is not for day-to-day management decisions. It's only for decisions like who's on the board, should we issue more stock, should we dissolve the corporation, those kinds of decisions. There's very few decisions that are really made by the board at that level, or made by the membership at that level, because the board even makes other decisions like setting the yearly budget, like that kind of stuff. The board makes, you don't have to get a vote of the entire membership for that. To have a vote of the entire membership for something, it's like just voting for the board and like certain legal kind of decisions that are made at that ownership level. All other day-to-day decisions can be made any way you want. It could be consensus, it could be holacracy, it could be democracy, it could be hierarchy. Whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Like legally with a cooperative structure, you can use any decision-making structure you want for operations. I think that's it. I think that's the basics.
That's the overview.
Yeah, that's the basics of how a cooperative works. So yeah, the question is this just a worker cooperative? That seems like that's what you've decided so far. Does that sound like the way you want to go?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the way I have visualized it. Although,
okay.
It doesn't. That's not cast in concrete anywhere either.
Sure.
Because if we had a group of gardeners deciding to go forward with the structuring, then they could have an opinion different than mine. I don't see why they would choose different than me, but sometimes I'm surprised that way.
Yeah, I mean, I like the simplicity of that. I'm trying to think of any reason that the homeowners, it might make sense to make them members. Only I think if they were going to make some sort of investment, like if they were giving space over to the cooperative in a way that wasn't like your typical customer relationship. But I think in this case, it is more like, because we're talking about treating this like landscaping work. So the homeowner is the client, very much so, and they get a say over how their garden is used. Now, if they were really giving over their yard and saying, do whatever you want with it, then you might want to give them more decision-making power, because they would want to be able to go to the top and say, hey, we only want these kinds of things happening in our yards. We don't want those kinds of things. Even though we've given you the power to decide what kind of plants go there, we'd like to have some say. But if it's like, no, the homeowner's like, I want this and I want that and I want that, and they can veto anything, they've got enough power.
Right.
They don't need more. In this case, the gardeners, who are kind of being told what to do, would need a little more power in being able to decide how they organize themselves. So that makes sense. So I would say where we're at with this diagram now, we've got homeowners on the outside, board members on the inside, cooks and gardeners somewhere in the middle. You were saying something about like regional kind of representatives, elected officials. I think I might put that then as a level in between the cooks, the workers at large, and the board members.
Right. So right now we've got 4 gardeners with active clients, 4 active gardeners with clients. So, and no resources to work with. So 95% of what comes in is distributed directly to the people who did the work. And that 5% is not even covering the liability insurance policy yet. Mm-hmm. So there aren't a whole lot of decisions to be made. But we could all get together on or do an email poll and make the decision that way. Mm-hmm. As you get bigger, you're going to have different groups of gardeners with different different requirements, different approaches to their homeowners, different internal organization on how they're organizing among themselves. And we need them to retain the authority to decide exactly how and when they're going to provide services to their homeowners. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. COPD, not COVID-19.
Okay.
Although we're all safe here. Then the next decision is what percentage of what comes in are we going to contribute to the organization providing more services to support us. And so that one, that might be impractical to make that decision by an email poll, for example. So each of these groups would then be sending a representative to a central council, which would be able to sit down and talk about what are the options and go back and talk to their members and then come to a plan that way, without having to involve every member in every detail. And so that's how I see it being structured down the road.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and your exact organizational structure will, evolve. It will evolve with what the members need, but I think it's safe to say there will be some sort of like elected positions, and that people filling those kinds of roles would have more decision-making power than just the members at large, but not as much as the board members. So.
And then the people who are actually providing the services, such as a bookkeeping service, that's going to bring in all the homeowner payments and then cut checks to all the gardeners. That kind of service would be under control then of the the central organization, rather than being at the whim of all the individual gardeners.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm wondering if that's separate class of people though. So are there going to be employees that aren't cooks or gardeners? Are those employees going to be members, or are they a separate class?
And I don't have an answer for that. They could be gardeners who are taking on this additional responsibility in exchange for a fee. So at least we have people that are knowledgeable about the business, also providing the services. Or it might be more cost effective to just hire a payroll service or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, I would think, either like a payroll service or just an independent contractor. If you do have to hire outside of the organization, like that would just keep it clean, and it would be like clear, no, this person's an independent contractor, they're not a member, they're not an owner of the organization like everyone else, unless they wanted to become one, and maybe it would be possible for them to do that. But so yeah, that they would be kind of outside, just like a payroll service, they'd be kind of outside of the organization, another kind of entity that's partnering with the organization, not a part of the organization, if that makes sense.
Correct. Although, one of our gardeners also runs a bookkeeping service. So
Sure. In that case, they would be in, and they would just be an elected position, or I don't even know if you'd say elected. It depends on how you end up doing it. Like, is it elected or is it assigned positions? You are now our, such and such versus like people electing them to be so maybe I should change that from elected officials to like roll holders or something like that. Because we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. Okay, so roll holders, whether that's elected or assigned, and then board members in the middle. Okay, so the thresholds to get into each one of these. Now, what I want is something really specific about, like, they pay money, sign up, like what do they do that brings them into that role? Okay, so start as homeowners. So they would buy the like $100 a month. And do they have to, does every homeowner have to do the $100 a month, or might there be other people who might get services that don't include that $100 a month?
Anything is possible down the road. The reason, I mean, right now we require every homeowner to sign up for a recurring payment of $100 a month. Mm-hmm. Because we need to be able to rely on that money coming in without us having to do a lot of follow-up. And are you still a part of the project? We'll just assume you're part of the project as long as the checks keep coming in. Mm-hmm. And that $100 a month is entitled to a tax deduction through our 501c3 as a contribution to the prototyping of this model. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't prevent our gardeners from saying, going and making an additional contract with homeowner and say, we want to do more work than the 4 hours a month. They could go ahead and contract that, but that wouldn't come through LSI because that's not part of what we're trying to accomplish here. Mm-hmm. Down the road, once you have a formal organization, then the gardeners could say that we don't want to mess with the 4 hours a month anymore, although I think that has some positive features to it. Mm-hmm. That we're only going to do bigger jobs and contract jobs. And I would assume that they'd want to continue to do both regular monthly service and be available for do bigger jobs as they were able to find the contracts for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also forgot about the possibility of, once you have cooks, then you'll have customers who are just buying stuff from the cooks. So would we say homeowners and customers?
Diners.
Yeah. Okay. Or purchase products. Yeah. Okay, so they're signing up for a gardening service or purchasing products. So purchase products or services. That's the first level. You're now a customer. Congratulations. I keep doing that. Throws everything off. Okay, it's fine. So. Sorry, keep messing this up. No, stop it. There it goes. I'll just keep making boxes until I get it right. Okay. Sorry, everybody. I suck at this. I know. Okay. Okay. The cooks and the gardeners. In order to become a cook or gardener, you'd have to join the cooperative, right?
Correct. And right now, there are no joining requirements other than saying I want to do it. Except that by saying you want to do it, you're saying that you want to do this service in a certain way, which is cycling carbon generated on site, rather than, so we describe it as changing old-fashioned landscaping, the old resource-intensive landscaping into creating habitats by using the on-site materials, rather than bundling it up and sending it off to landfill and then importing materials. we want to use all those materials generated on site. So there are certain techniques that we use. So the gardener would be signing on to use those techniques on behalf of our homeowner clients.
But for the purposes of this diagram, I'm looking at.
Sorry, I lost your audio.
Really? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You can hear me?
I can't hear you.
Oh no. What's going on? Can you hear me now?
No.
No.
I'm sorry.
I'll fix it. I will fix it.
Properties, webcam. Okay, I just switched all the audio to the other microphone. Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
You can. Okay, great. Okay, sorry. This microphone is just useless. Okay. So for I was saying that, so for the purposes of this diagram, and I've had the same issue with the other client I was working with. Like, I'm talking about legally. Like, yeah, they're saying, yeah, we can do that. We can garden that way. Like, that's all agreements. That's fine. But I'm talking about legal agreements here and decision-making power. So they join the cooperative. So what gives them that ownership then would be legally to buy a membership share, right?
Right, and right now the buy-in is zero.
Right.
But once you have built up a value that the organization is providing, I think you're perfectly valid to say that you have to go through this series of steps in order to become a member, including one of which might be spending time working for the organization or putting up some money. But right.
Yeah.
The whole idea is to provide places for people who are having trouble with finding their way in the market economy.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that there has to actually be an exchange of money in order for someone to join a cooperative legally. Now, they might be able to work for the cooperative initially a little bit to make that money. They could just not get paid the first month or something. And then just that money would go towards their membership share. But I do think you actually have to collect money and put it into a bank account. I don't think you can just say sweat equity.
So we could put them on as an assistant to an existing gardener for a period of time.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. That's a great idea.
And then the money goes toward, or half of the money, or however you wanted to set it up.
Yeah, and in fact, I would even just put that in here as a requirement to get to that level. I would think that you should have some vetting time, some initial work trade, or after they pay in for their membership share, maybe they could go ahead and get paid. Maybe they could get like a pay raise when they become a full member or something. But to have some just initial get to know you kind of time, so that people who join and just work for 3 days and then change their mind, you don't have to refund them some membership fee and go through all the trouble of whatever kind of sign up process you have to do. You don't want that extra accounting. So I think you should have a way for people to join just initially to get a feel for it before they sign up and become a full member. Not only that, but also with the decision-making power, you don't want to give somebody who just joined the organization a week ago the power to decide, whether the company issues new shares or something, because they don't know anything about the company. People should get to know the organization a little bit before they're given full voting rights, right? As an owner, right? So some sort of internship? No, it could be an internship. What would you call that initial period?
The training period, maybe, or a probationary period.
Mm-hmm.
Although it actually, you're not a full member. You're not entitled to any distributions unless you have a client, unless you have a homeowner client that is agreeing $100 a month in exchange for your services. So we could have a lot of people interested in becoming gardeners and having filled out all of the requirements, but still not be full members because we don't have enough clients for them.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully we would be able to solve that by giving them good marketing materials and have them go out and find their own clients. But
Okay.
that would be a requirement, is a client that you're actually working for, generating money to justify payments to you.
Okay. So so, rather than just the general term join cooperative, being more specific, I'd say to purchase a share, finish training, and get a client.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Once you have a client, then you would be a member and be able to vote. And,
yes.
For, say, this is our slate of people who are going to fill that central ring, and you get to vote for who you think would be the best one for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So then once somebody is just a member, they have voting rights. Then we move on to the elected or assigned roll holders, roll fillers, something like that. So that would be to be elected or assigned a role.
Right.
Done.
So there has to be some sort of smaller group who has some experience running the business.
Mm-hmm.
That says these are the roles we need to fill. These are the services that we want to be able to afford to pay to provide. And then, so it's this percentage of the money coming in is going to go to administration, and the balance of that goes to the person who earned it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then the final level is board members, and so obviously elected to the board. And as we already talked about, that means that all of the workers, all of the people in that circle of cooks and gardeners would have one vote, and they would elect people to the board. And you could decide to have that board be as many people as you want. I mean, obviously usually people have it be an odd number of people so you don't have ties, but it could be 3 or more. I would recommend fewer rather than too many. Then you end up with really long meetings.
Well, in LSI, we set it up as a flexible number. So you start with at least 3, but if you've got more people that are going to be actually contributing, then you can expand the number of board members. Mm-hmm. And then when you have people not show up for meetings, you can just shrink the number of boards members.
That makes sense. I mean, you could also base it on like the regions, the number of regions. Although if you get too big, then you have 20 people and it's just, I don't know about board members with, 21 people. I don't know about that. I don't know if that's a good idea. It's hard to get that many people together.
Well, we'd need to be at 1,000 gardeners with 20,000 homeowners and $2 million in a month in revenue.
Yeah. But even then, I mean, you've got that next level out, so you can have like regional boards, and that's how Organic Valley does it, or Crop, that cooperative. They have regions, and then each region elects their representative, so that region meets, and they actually make a lot of decisions regionally, and then they also have then the central board, and those are elected separately. So you could do something like that. Okay, yay, we're getting right through this. Okay, so I'm filling out this bullseye, and I filled out along the top and the bottom, and then on the sides, I've got one side says contributing, and the other says receiving. So what are each of these people levels contributing, and what are they receiving from the organization? So we can start typing right in there.
So you mean going into each of the levels?
Yeah. So starting with homeowners.
Well, yeah. So the homeowners are receiving information and labor, in order to convert their old-fashioned resource-intensive lawn into a habitat that is cycling carbon instead of sending carbon to the landfill. And then once you build up the fertility, you're also producing potentially food for the homeowner and the gardener. And that's, that's a different level of partnership in terms of the food that we're going to be producing.
So,
which is also,
yeah, so they're receiving their landscaping / gardening service. And then maybe access to food as well, right? Yeah, I don't know exactly how that's going to work, whether it's like a CSA where they get some of everything or they just get some of what's in their garden and then purchase the rest from cooks. Not exactly sure what that's going to look like yet. And then they're contributing, their fees, the payment. I'm just trying to think. That would be like either subscriptions or one-time payments, right?
Right. Well, yeah. So the recurring fee for an ongoing service, which can